Hi, welcome to the Kingston Police Services Board meeting number 22-16 for Wednesday, October 26, 2022, rescheduled from October 13th, 2022, as the board did not have quorum. So I would like to ask Chief McNeely if she could introduce the following people that are going to, with respect to the Youth and Policing Initiative.
Thank you. So we have with us today Constable Valerie Herding, who's a member of our core unit. And this summer she took the lead role in the Youth and Policing Initiative. And this program is sponsored by the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. And this summer we welcomed 6 students. And so welcome, Valerie, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. So about the YIPI program, so the goal of the Youth and Policing Initiative was to inspire young people to look at the many different aspects of policing and to empower students to become ambassadors of positive change in the city of Kingston. And moving forward, I have a lot of examples of what they did in order to achieve that. So students hired by the YIPI program engaged in productive activities in a safe and healthy environment. These activities included work mentorship in various sections of the Kingston Police Service, developing a working relationship with a number of youth organizations in Kingston, and supporting community initiatives, all while learning valuable life and employment skills. So in addition to all the community work and personal development done through this program, the students had the opportunity to learn about the various areas of policing. Students had the unique opportunity of completing an oath of secrecy that allowed them to hear a far broader range of information regarding police work. So the YIPI gets to visit numerous officers in different units and share what they do in the community. And even if they weren't interested in policing in their future careers, they still were open to all members of the community, regardless of their interests and desired career paths. So with this program this summer, some of the community events that our YIPIs were involved in, they were involved with the Kingston Community Health Center, and they served seniors lunch for the Penguin Seniors Group. They attended 2 different leadership days. One was with Durham Regional YIPIs and another was with Ottawa Police, where they got to go there. They got to do leadership activities. They got to hear from human resources and other people who were talking to them about positive roles that they can take in their community. They got to help with community events like our fire truck pull, which was to raise money for epilepsy, the camp days for Tim Hortons. They got to work at the Salvation Army youth camp. So there's youth camps that run in the summer for youth whose families cannot afford to take their children to camp. So we got to go out there and bring our obstacle course and set everything up and build relationships with those youth. They attended the Cops and Rodders event at Montana's on Division Street, where we served food and helped raise money for Special Olympics. We worked the Almost Home City event down at Ontario Street. They worked the Teddy Bear Picnic, which is to raise funds for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And along with the community involvement, they also worked within their community. So for example, they attended Martha's Table, they helped clean, organize, they served food, they prepped food. And that was one of their favorite things, by the way. It was very rewarding, as well as they worked with Youth Diversion, where they attended the Robinson Community Garden and did gardening with youth who were at risk and built relationships with them, which they did that weekly. They also did Park Patrol, where they went around and handed out positive incentive tickets, which are those McDonald's coupons. When you see, kids doing something that's positive, you hand those out and it gets them a free ice cream cone or free Happy Meal. They did their introduction to the Downtown Business Association, where they went into stores and they introduced themselves and explained what their role was and what they would be doing for the summer. As well, while they were downtown, they did the Lock It or Lose It campaign where you hand out pamphlets on people's cars just to remind them to keep their vehicles locked and keep, valuables out of sight. And the thing that I was the most proud of is on January 31st, 2022, as you all heard, we had a 10-year-old member of our community who was struck and killed by a vehicle in front of Mother Teresa Catholic School. And as a result of this tragedy, we knew at the Kingston Police that we had to do something. We had to do more. And so what we came up with was putting together a pedestrian safety presentation. And after all of our research, we realized that the youth at risk of running out in front of schools and getting struck by vehicles were usually from the ages between 8 and 10 years old. But I had the Yippies put together as their main summer project, a pedestrian safety project that would work for ages kindergarten up to grade 6. And they had to research, how many minutes can someone that age hold their attention, and it had to be a very visually stimulating PowerPoint presentation. So they worked on that presentation all summer long. The first PowerPoint presentation they did was not enough. So I had them redo it, kindly had them redo it. So they redid their presentation, and with the help of our traffic unit, the investigators from the Mother Teresa tragedy, and our sergeant of the traffic unit, Sergeant Koopman, who went slide by slide and worked with our Yippies. We perfected the presentation, which we were able to present to Chief McNeely and everyone who attended the graduation. And therefore that presentation is now delivered in schools. And I was able to do the first presentation. The first presentation at Mother Teresa. The first one was the group of grade 4s to grade 6s. And it was very, very well, the principal appreciated it so much, and all the teachers, the students, it was very well received. So that was the biggest thing from that summer. As well, extra stuff that they did, like I told you, the team building stuff. We worked with, they got to work with different divisions within our department. And on an extra note, they also were able to get certifications as a result of this summer program. So they received their first aid and CPR certification, which with the backlog from COVID was not easy to get them into that, to get their first aid and CPR, but they received their level C certificate, as well as they did a bicycle training course so they could do some bicycle patrol. So they received what's called their Can-Am bike certification, which all looks amazing on resumes. And so yeah, with the Yippie program this summer, our goal was to look for diverse students from all different backgrounds who could come together as a team and make a difference. And I can honestly tell you that was achieved. I was so proud of these students. They went above and beyond, and we received all positive feedback from our community partners, our Kingston Police staff, the Yippies, their parents. I mean, I'm like, just, some of the feedback from one student who we hired for their summer, Hamza, who came to Canada almost a year ago today. His family lived in Mongolia and his father was a teacher there. And while his father was teaching in one of the schools there, the Turkish terrorist group came in to kidnap his father's best friend, and all the teachers, and kidnapped them. So then the Mongolian government came to the Turkish government and said, if you don't return our teachers, there's going to be, we're not going to work with you. So they returned the teachers, and 2 weeks later, they came back to re-kidnap Hamza's father and his best friend. So they seek refuge to Canada and ended up in Kingston. And so Hamza was one of our Yippies, and he had only been speaking English for 8 months. And as Chief McNeely can tell you, he was amazing. And one comment he wrote on the card that was given to me was, "I would like to personally thank you. In my whole life, no one has helped me the way you did. I am so grateful." And I mean, that in itself, the program, and I was once a Yippie when I was in high school, and I can tell you, like, the program means the world to some kids. And one mother, Deanna Green, who actually helped us with part of our pedestrian safety presentation as a result of her engineering work with the city, she wrote, you know, I'd like to thank you for being an amazing mentor for Kate this summer. I really loved her working with such a strong female role model. Your dedication to your job is inspirational. Stay safe and keep up the great work. And just with that feedback, you know, it was so appreciated. And obviously it speaks for itself with the value of this program. Is there any questions?
That was very good. Thank you, Valerie. Any questions from the board? How many, Valerie, how many youth were involved this year?
So what makes the program so successful is we like to hire 2 team leaders. So they have to be previous youth and policing students, and they become the lead, which makes our job a lot easier. And then we had a grant to hire 4 new students. Okay. And they were all from different schools, not on purpose, but like, that's just how it happened, which was great. And different backgrounds, all bilingual in some way. Like 2 of them spoke Turkish, Spanish, Mongolian, French, and yeah, it just ended up that the mixture clicked. Because when we're doing the interviews and when we're looking for, you know, students with the diverse background that would most benefit from this program, we're also looking for a group that I believe would be cohesive, and because you have to be a team and you're going out and we're representing Kingston Police and working with the community. So it has to be the right people for the job, because it is a 40-hour week paying job, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. So it's also an excellent opportunity for income alone. With this program, Hamza was the sole provider for his family all summer because his parents still haven't found work, since they are still unable to speak English. So Hamza, as a 17-year-old young man, was the sole provider for his family. Yeah, so it was 6 this summer, which I really hope that continues, because it was a perfect number.
Very good.
Yeah.
Christian.
What is the age range of the participants? What are the criteria for selection, and how is the program advertised to ensure that it's equitable access for all potential applicants?
Excellent question. I should have covered that in the beginning. So the youth and policing eligibility criteria is they need to be between the ages of 15 and 18. They need to reside in the city of Kingston, which has been hard because there's a lot of people in the outskirts that have applied and have been disappointed with not being able to be part of the program, but they're outside of the city limits. They must be enrolled in a secondary school. They must be responsible for transportation to and from work. And they must be legally eligible to work in Canada. And when we're doing our advertising, so we do it on all our Kingston Police social media pages, as I'm sure you're aware, on the website. And also as school resource officers, which I am a school resource officer, we go out to our schools and we say, you know, we're running the youth and policing program this summer. If you can think of a well-deserving student for this position, please let me know. And a lot of times, you know, guidance counselors have approached students and said, this would be excellent for you, because they all know about the program. The program's been running since, well, I won't age myself, but definitely since it was named differently. It was a police mentorship program in my day when I was in high school, but it's been around for a long time. So we do get the assistance of our schools in order to help us find those students who would be really well suited.
And when you rank prospective applicants, what are the criteria according to how you rank those applicants to ensure that everybody is judged equitably and fairly to objective criteria?
That's another excellent question. I will show you right now.
Thank you.
So we have, and I mean, I'd be happy to share this with you anytime. So we have youth and policing interview questionnaires. So we have one for the students, and when we have a different one for the team leaders. And when we're doing the interviews, like Sergeant Neeson Niagam and I did interviews, we each had our own sheets. You have to fill them out. You ask questions. Like, for instance, one of my first questions, please tell us something about yourself that isn't on your resume. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then you rank it, like it's check mark system. What do you know about the youth and policing initiative? Sorry. Another question, why are you interested in being a member of the youth and policing initiative? What skills and experiences make you the best candidate for the youth and policing initiative? Another one, if selected for this program, what is one personal characteristic you would like to improve upon and why? Because this is also about mentorship. We're not looking for, the stars and we're looking for someone who would most benefit for this and who would bring, a fresh, who would bring a fresh light and information and help us better ourselves as well, right, within the Kingston Police. So we look for all of that. Another question is, tell us about a time when you had to work in a team group setting. What was your role? What was the outcome? And we evaluate fairly on professionalism, attitude, enthusiasm, communication. And I don't mean like whether they can clearly speak English, because with Homstuff, for instance, we took our time. He was searching for words and stuff, and that was okay because he had an incredible interview. But we also have to remember this is a paid position, and you are wearing youth and policing attire, and you are representing the Kingston Police, and it's important that who we hire are professional, respectable, hardworking students.
So in each of these questions, they would get a score out of 10 or something like that.
Yeah, so the final score is out of 30, and we save all of our interviews. We save all of them so that if anyone ever came back and had an issue or a complaint, we have everything saved. And sitting as one of the interviewers, I am proud to say that it is a very fair process. And
so it's basically two of you.
I'm proud of what we do.
There's two of you doing the scoring, if I understand that correctly. Is that right? Basically, you scored independently and then you kind of compare notes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And they get reviewed. Sorry. Also, like Inspector Funnel reviewed everything that we did and approved it.
No, I think it's a great initiative, and thanks for walking me through the background details on how you select the candidates.
My pleasure.
Very good. Very informative. And yeah, I mean, people like Hamza, I mean, that's a win being able to be part of this initiative, being a Yippie. I'm sure that it did him a lot of good, and the others that were involved in the program. So Valerie, thanks for spending time with us and informing us on how it works and whatnot. Really appreciate that. And thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me. And I just wanted to tell you, at the end of this program for the first time, we put together a graduation, and it was held in the community room. And Chief McNeely can tell you how it was. I thought it was incredible. But you're all welcome to attend next after the program ends next summer. And because each student got up and spoke about their experience from the summer. And, some of them said it was the best summer of their lives. And one student said how she was an introvert, and this program really brought out a lot in her and made her, more confident, and now feels like she can be be more successful in her future goals and paths and stuff. It was inspirational. So you're all welcome to attend next summer. I I will make sure I buy a lot more donuts at the table. I had a whole like candy and donut table, and don't ask, it's the mother in
All
me.
right. Very cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks, Valerie. Great job.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that was great. Moving on. Is there a disclosure of conflict of interest? No? Okay. Then can I get an approval of the agenda? Jeff, Christian, all in favor? Very good. That the agenda is approved as amended. And then if I can get a adoption of the minutes from meeting 2214 held on September 22nd of 2022 to be adopted. Jeff, Christian, all in favor? Very good. Thank you. For communications, if there is any questions for the following communications from the Minister of the Solicitor General, CAPG, OASPB, and the Human Rights Commission and the Information and Privacy Commission of Ontario that was received. Okay.
Did we have a
there's no
mover and
deleg-
second? Excuse me, Jared. Did we have a mover and seconder?
Yes, Jeff. Christian, all in favor? Thank you. Delegation, thanks, Lori, keeping me in line again. Delegations, there isn't. And for reports, the chair calls for a motion for the following reports to be received for information purposes. First or seconder? Jeff, Jimmy, all in favor? Thank you. Then the first one will be the quarterly statistic report for use of force.
Actually, the first one's for just the statistics and then the use of force, and then we'll have the other report that's coming. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So our crime against persons have decreased by about 8.3%, but our crimes against property has increased. In terms of our crimes against persons, the hate crimes and hate motivated crimes, which are the ones that don't necessarily meet the criminal threshold, they've increased by about 19% for the same time of last year. So for that, from January to the end of September. So the increased reporting may be reflective of the inroads that our core unit has been making with respect to our community outreach. In addition, our equity, diversity, and inclusion officer follows up with each of the complainants through the reassurance program. And then to ensure that community supports are in place where needed and to offer additional assistance as required. In addition, there may be a number of other areas that are reflective of this increase, where citizens are reporting more hate-based incidents to the police based on people just speaking out more to increase awareness, and really to an overall increased anonymity that's occurring, on the internet, and people are being able to hide behind the internet to do hate speech and those kinds of things that are happening. So we really do encourage the reporting of these matters to the police to ensure that we're aligning our resources to what's happening in our community. And we really want to ensure that we're taking this very seriously when we do our follow-ups. So the driver in the property crimes have been theft of vehicles, which have increased by about 48%. And our other thefts, which include things such as shoplifting and theft from vehicles and so forth, they've increased by about 28%. And as mentioned in the past, with respect to vehicle thefts that have been increasing really across the country, with high-end vehicles being shipped overseas for sales due to supply shortages and so forth. But in our jurisdiction, we're seeing a real mixture of vehicles being stolen. Some of them are high-end for sure, but definitely not exclusively so. And the thefts are occurring throughout the city, not just specific locations. We're seeing crimes of opportunity where the theft occurs and is dumped in another location within the city. Those vehicles are ones that are easily recovered. We've seen Honda SUVs, Ford pickup trucks, Dodge trucks, Jeeps taken. I know a couple of our stolen autos were recovered in Quebec in a sea container. So our general unit is working proactively on this trend and some leads that they're following up on with respect to this. Thefts in general are increasing as a result of some of the pandemic restrictions being relaxed, of course, and the fact that charged individuals tend to be released back into the community and allows recidivism to occur. Our fraud occurrences have increased by about 10%, which involves matters such as investment scams involving Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, phishing scams, the grandparent scam, to name but a few. Overall, we've seen about a 5% decrease in our calls for service in 2022 compared to the same time last year. And on the other hand, our 911 calls for service have increased by about 9% over the last year's time frame. Our communication staff are our first responders are taking our first calls from people in the community and are also there for our officers. They're the first calming voice that victims in complainants hear in their first times of crisis. So we're very proud of the work they do and the number of calls that are really taken within the communication center. That being said, the complexity of the investigations that are occurring means it takes a lot of time and collaboration to complete investigations. And as mentioned, in the last statistical report, we've had 4 homicides, all of which have been solved. And that doesn't include the double homicide from last year, where that has been solved this year. Our assaults and robbery investigations have remained consistent year over year. Our human trafficking investigations are also lengthy, and we've recently seen some increases in charges in this area. And I will highlight one of the following human traffic investigation that has recently been in the media. So in January of 2022, a joint investigation called Project Shamrock began with when Kingston police were made aware of an individual luring women and girls through social media platforms for the purpose of exploitation. So a thorough investigation was conducted by the Provincial Human Trafficking Intelligence-led Joint Forces team from the OPP, and they were also assisted with the Kingston Police, Ottawa Police, Peterborough Police Service, and the OPP Digital Forensics. So initially 10 victims were identified and provided with aid through victim services. The accused was arrested on April 6th of 2022, and due to continued investigation and increased public awareness from previous media releases, additional victims were identified and resulted in further charges being laid. And again, this investigation was supported by, for the victims, with victim services from Kingston, as well as the OPP Victim Centered Approach team. So as part of this ongoing investigation, we had a 38-year-old male resident of Kingston. He was charged with with 95 offenses contrary to the Criminal Code of Canada. So very lengthy investigation and still ongoing. Another example of where members of our uniform patrol and emergency response unit responded to a barricaded person, and that was in the end of August at approximately 3:40 in the morning, where police were called to a residence in the city of Kingston. And at this time, there was a male that was threatening the roommate with and destroying the residence from the inside. Once at the scene, further investigations by police revealed that the accused, who appeared to be under the influence of controlled substances, had initially entered the room of the roommate with a hammer in their hand and raising the hammer in a threatening manner. The accused then departed the room with the hammer still in hand and began damaging the rest of the residence. So the police were called, and upon arrival, this male barricaded himself in the residence and containment was done. At one point, the accused yelled out that further damage was going to be occurring. The Kingston Police Emergency Response Unit responded to this scene, and police negotiators attempted to speak with the accused and defuse the situation. So it started at about 3:40 in the morning and ended at about 7:55 a.m. and extensive negotiation attempts were made, and the person was arrested inside the residence and transported to headquarters for a bail hearing. So although confrontational, the incident was ultimately brought to a peaceful and safe resolution. And again, a 38-year-old individual was charged with assault with a weapon, threats caused to property damage, mischief under, and breach of probation charges. So examples of traffic criminal code offenses include impaired driving, dangerous operation of motor vehicles, criminal negligence involving a motor vehicle, and those are statistics that are seen on the chart as well. So although Kingston Police recorded about a 5% decrease in the first 6 months of 2022 over the 6-month period last year in terms of impaired driving, when we look at the current 9-month statistics from January to September, we've jumped to an increase in numbers. And of course, what we're seeing is we're very much proactive in combating impaired driving. We're proactively instructing our frontline officers on that standard field sobriety testing, as well as maintaining personnel being trained in the intoxilizer and drug recognition experts. We've also do ride programs that are done throughout the year and make use of the authority under the mandatory alcohol screening, in other words, random breath testing. So there's an ongoing concern of the increase of impaired driving, not just solely by alcohol or drugs, but by a combination of both, which can lead to complexities in these cases that were not as prevalent in the years past. So we're again very committed to combating impaired driving in all its forms. As mentioned, we've also seen an increase in fraud occurrences, which have their own complexities. And I know recently there was a grandparent scam that was done where charges have been recently laid, and that was a successful for us. You know, the Kingston Police are warning the public about grandparent scams that have been used with increasing frequency. In these cases, the scammer will call the victim, who's generally a senior, and advise them that their grandchild is currently in jail. The scammer will state that they are a lawyer and require a large sum of money to help them get out of jail. And then they will send a courier over to recover the funds. Again, if you've these kinds of things are important that people just hang up and ensure that they're not falling prey to this, and to call the police as well. So this is a sampling of the trends that we're seeing criminally, but it doesn't capture the statistics involving non-criminal activities responding, such as the sudden deaths that we're responding to, missing persons, mental health and addiction, calls for service. We're also staffing up every Friday and Saturday nights for the months of September and October to respond to large gatherings, noisy parties, alcohol violations, so that uniform patrol is not impacted in the responding to calls for service throughout the city. And as mentioned, regarding our mental health calls for service during the period of January to September, we've had a total of a reduction in about 21% reduction from that of last year. And the decrease in the calls for service can be attributed again to the relaxing of the COVID restrictions, where there's a lot more face-to-face counseling that's being able to be done. We've got the effectiveness, of course, of our MCERT and our COAST program and other service agencies being able to engage more, as I mentioned, and new outreach initiatives that are happening, such as the, it's called the Porch, portable RV. So it's a portable outreach care hub that's been initiated just recently with a combination from Street Health and United Way, so that they can reach out to more vulnerable communities that where there are barriers for whether barriers if you have to come to a particular location. This RV can go out to different areas and meet people where they're at. And again, we've seen an increase in mental health apprehensions and officer wait times at the hospitals, where they're now about a little over an hour and 16 minutes versus about an hour, a little less than an hour last year. So officer wait times may be attributed to staffing shortages at the hospitals. And then finally, I'd like to highlight the work of our traffic unit in doing the response to the new community safety zones. And Sergeant Koopman continues to sit on the school transportation safety working group that was created through the city. Discussions include the future rollout of additional community safety zones in the next year and other problematic areas in the schools. The traffic safety unit provides education about the new community safety zones, and its members are proactively engaged at the presence and enforcement in the 2 pilot areas. At this point, it's around Lancaster Public School and Mother Teresa Catholic School, as well as Lord Strathcona and St. Paul's schools. So members have been laying bylaw tickets, no parking, no stopping tickets, and speeding and stop sign violations that have been occurring. Of note, the speed reductions are 40 kilometers per hour, and there's a further 30 kilometer per hour around the frontage of the area schools. And as Valerie has mentioned, there's also a role to be played by our school resource officers regarding education to the students in the area of safety. And so that would conclude our statistical report and the use of force by Deputy Chief Scott Fraser.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go over the use of force. Just to echo Jared's comments earlier, congratulations, Jimmy and Jeff as well from us here. Thank you for stepping forward with council, so appreciate it. Use of force reporting. Of course, use of force reports are submitted anytime force is used. So when we look at our quarter here in quarter 3, we'll go through a number of interactions. Just so you know, when we do use of force reporting, they can be done in two manners, by a team or by an individual. So just depending. We used, there were 17 incidents that were reported on in Q3. In comparison to the first quarter, there was 20. In the second quarter, there was 18. So pretty well that status quo in relation to use of force reporting. Some of the events that I can just touch on that were where we did report on. A firearm was just discharged twice, which was just to obviously euthanize an injured deer during a motor vehicle collision. A number of times firearms were pointed. Examples of that would be, when our emergency response units executing drug search warrants. A couple specific incidents. We had a report of an individual who pointed a firearm at his father. That was the report we had. So obviously our members attended, and our emergency response unit was there. And after negotiations and their activities, they had to enter the house, and they located the male inside, and he was arrested without incident. We also had a barricaded suicidal male who was armed with a knife. Once again, we do our best to negotiate, and at this time the officers did have to enter again after failed negotiations, and the male was apprehended without incident. That's the issue of where a firearm was pointed. We also have where it's just drawn, or a conducted energy weapon is pointed, which is another category. In those cases, a couple that I can discuss here are, we attended to a barricaded female who was obviously suffering from a mental health crisis. She'd already cut herself, obviously, and I know I attended that scene. There was a lot of, evidence of her cutting herself, and it was very concerning about her safety. She was apprehended without incident, and officers did get her to the hospital and get her treated. Also, our emergency response unit attended to another barricaded male. Obviously, this one was in the media, where the individual had stabbed a person after riding on the bus. Then he barricaded himself at his house. Officers were there doing negotiations, and at a particular point in the evening, the individual fired a shot at our officers. One of our officers was injured during that incident. However, we're happy to report we did get to a successful conclusion with that, with the individual surrendering, and our officer who was hurt has recovered and was back at work shortly thereafter, which is great. Conducted energy weapons being deployed. We were at a break and enter in progress. The subject who was committing the break and enter became combative with the police. The conducted energy weapon was effectively deployed, and the subject was arrested. Another incident, we went to a person suffering from a mental health crisis. They were laying in their bathtub, and they were threatening to harm themselves with a knife. And there was no other safe manner to get there. The conducted energy weapon was effectively deployed. The individual was apprehended, and no injuries. And one incident where we just displayed the conducted energy weapon, a male who was high on drugs, threatening a staff at one of our local shelters. He was failing to comply with our requests. He was threatening staff and running into traffic. And when the officers kind of pulled their conducted energy weapon out, the individual saw it and immediately surrendered. So those are a few of the incidents in our use of force reporting. If you have any questions regarding use of force, I'm happy to answer them.
Anyone from the board? Okay. Then I would ask if we could move along, and if John Howes can speak to the quarterly budget report.
Thank you. Good morning. We have the results now to the end of September. As you can see, our total net cost of $32,256,000 compared to a budget of $31,995,000. So we did run a small deficit of $261,000, but that was less than 1% of our total budget of 0.8%. Quickly going through some of the line items, in terms of recovery and revenues, we recovered $3,342,000 against a budget of $3,126,000. So we are favorable by $215,000. The big story there is the grant revenue. We are running above budget by about $372,000. There was a couple of additional grants we got this year. One was for Beacon, and one was the INSERC. They were not budgeted. bear in mind, when we get those grants, we do have added expenditures coming in below in the expense section. Alarm licensing revenue was just slightly off budget, down about 17,000. I don't have a good reason for that. We'll be looking at it for next year's budget, what we should put in. Paid duty, slightly unfavorable. Again, that's money in and out, and that tends to pick up in the last quarter. Expense recovery, 755,000. Total is pretty much on budget, slight unfavorable by 24,000. That ebbs and flows depending on the timing. We have quite a few seconded officers, and when those funds come in, just the timing of that can affect that line. Another background checks, another proceeds, 77,000 unfavorable. That has recovered from the pandemic months. It's still down a little bit from where we were in the past. I think we'll see that pick up a little bit in the last quarter. With Queens back, we do tend to do a few more background checks in the last quarter. So not too many surprises there. In terms of operating costs, 35,599,000 against a budget of 35,122,000, $476,000 unfavorable. The big item there is salaries and wages are unfavorable by 426,000. And when we peel that back, unpack it, we see that the overtime is unfavorable by 451,000. It has been really busy in the last 9 months, as the crime statistics show. And I listed 6 line items in the report we sent in there, which actually accounts for 463,000 of that. 26,000 incurred supporting the Freedom Convoy, 83,000 incurred over the St. Patrick's Day weekend at Queens, 87,000 incurred supporting 6 major incidences, which were the 4 homicides and 2 barricaded persons. 37,000 incurred for the slow roll protests through Kingston. 102,000 incurred on 1 investigation that is now complete. And 128,000 incurred at Queens during the month of September. Of course, we will see that pick up in October as well. Base wages are favorable by 173,000. Keep in mind, our budget is allocated evenly by month. There was a contractual wage increase July 1st, and that hits Q3 and Q4. And we are on track to be on budget on that line because we'll have the rest of the increase come through in the last quarter. Part-time wages unfavorable by 18,000. We do have some sicknesses and absences, particularly if the special constables and in the communication center, and we've been filling in with some part-time people. Fringe benefits unfavorable by 145. This is that line that's always big unfavorable in the first quarter and then slowly comes down as the year moves along. I can see that unfavorability reducing further in the last quarter as we hit most of the statutory benefits are paid in the first 6 months, of course, and we'll see that continue to go down. Paid duties unfavorable by 115,000, while the revenue activity is down as well, so one offsets the other. Supplies and materials are unfavorable by 51,000. When we looked at that, contracted services were favorable by 52,000, reflecting the timing of the fall maintenance projects. We have a couple of big projects coming in this fall, as usual. Education and training is favorable by 129. We did hire mostly experienced officers this year, so we didn't have the tuition costs going out, and that's impacting that. Investigative services unfavorable by 204,000. This is the other set of expenses for the major investigation we did this year. We had the overtime I've already talked about. This is the rest of that. The total project was around $350,000 for that major investigation. Utilities favorable by 94,000. We're monitoring that to see what's going on there. Fuel unfavorable by 73,000. That deserves no other explanation except pump prices are high. Uniforms are unfavorable by 6,000, reflecting the timing of purchases. Professional services are unfavorable by 69. There are some unbudgeted spending on some special projects so far this year. Insurance is unfavorable by 25,000. We did put a 10% increase in the budget last year, obviously not enough, and I'm told that that will continue to go up in next year's budget. All the other spending on all the other lines we have, we're only $8,000 off budget, indicating all the other categories seem to be tracking pretty close to budget, which is good. So yeah, we have a $261,000 deficit after 9 months. As we head into the last quarter, of course, we're going to be spending a fair bit on the Queens activity. And I think last year we spent just shy of $1 million. So I think you'll see that a deficit grow during that last quarter. Any questions?
Christian, go ahead.
When the time comes, it would be good to hear about the $350,000 project. and the results that that yielded. Whenever the time is appropriate, maybe we can also learn more about the unbudgeted spending on special projects.
Yes, that was Project Kodiak, and it did have favorable results. I don't know, did you do anything you want to add on that, Inspector Pete?
This may not be the appropriate time to talk about this. I'm happy for the team to circle back on that at a future event.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Christian. Okay, anyone else? No? John, thank you for the good work, as
Thank you.
always. Yeah. Okay, and then if we can talk about Angie, if we can talk about the Queen's Homecoming.
Yes, and I have Inspector Brian Peak here to talk about the full homecoming update from last weekend.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I guess I'll start with just reiterating the fact that these weekends are very large police operations. They have a lot of moving parts. We have a lot of partners, both within the policing community, local government departments, and of course, educational institutions around Kingston. I'm happy to say this year, so far, there have been no officers injured. We have had some injuries in the past. So with over 300 plus deployed throughout the operation, I think that's a good sign for us. Clearly a logistically challenging event. The staffing model has slightly changed this year. It's obviously quite expensive. Everything seems to be more expensive now. So just meals and accommodations alone for visiting partners is quite expensive. We did employ something new this year called police liaison teams. We don't currently have our own team, and it is a specialization. We're looking to maybe develop our own, but we borrowed from the OPP and the Ottawa Police this year, and their role was to head out into the community, obviously with a specific focus on the student population and the residences surrounding sort of our general area of operation. I think it's had a big impact. I'm quite impressed with the work that they've done. They seem to have made some significant inroads with Queens itself, just in terms of more access to students. This is the first time I've seen sort of the police be welcome into the cafeterias. They had tables set up last week in all three of the cafeterias, and the reports back to me suggest a pretty positive reception. I do believe they've also gotten into the residences. So it's the youngest population, and probably, the ones that we want to get these messages to the most, because we're trying to change the culture here. And I guess starting this year with Frosh, maybe in a few years, it'll be a little different. So the police liaisons, they go out in a non-enforcement role. It's a very collaborative approach with partners. And as I said, I think it's been impactful. They also, of course, deliver the message of, if you don't take their advice, there are consequences, which we did see on the weekend. So clearly it didn't just extinguish a mass gathering. We did have one as expected. Based on the intelligence that we'd gathered leading up, it was similar to what we expected, and of course, similar to recent years. I do personally feel that the enforcement strategy that we're employing with bylaw, coupled with the liaison team continued messaging on the day of the event, allowed us to successfully clear the street without any major public order actions against the crowd. I also think we cleared it a little faster than in recent years, and I attribute that to some high enforcement teams. And I think we need to continue that and maybe even be a little more robust in the coming weekend. Obviously, utilizing University District Safety Initiative, the fines are higher. And, declaring a nuisance party and then having the crowd remain, it makes it pretty easy to enforce the failing to comply, which is a $500 tag. So what we found was, as bylaw and Kingston Police started issuing these tickets, you would have one individual get one, and 3 or 4 surrounding that individual decide they didn't want one, and they started to leave. So to me, I think that's successful and moving forward, we're going to continue with that. Despite the constant messaging and warnings, we did have injuries occur to attendees from a lot of the behaviors that we strongly suggest aren't safe, including partying on rooftops. We did have at least one person fall off a roof and sustain a broken bone that we know of, only one. Crowd surfing on, various objects. We've had boats in the past. This year it ended up being a shopping cart. And we did have sort of a female student fall out of that cart from height, because obviously it's being lifted above the students' heads. So no one caught her. She landed on her head and was unconscious. So we had to go into the crowd to extract her for a hospital visit. We also very unfortunately had a serious motor vehicle collision on Brock Street with a pedestrian. I certainly can't say that wasn't as a result of attending the party, but we don't know that for sure. The bottom line is sort of the pedestrian volume in the area and not crossing where they should and crossing in dark, unsafe areas definitely contributed to this accident. So we're all hoping for the best for that pedestrian. And that coming close to being a fatality, the last update we had were life-altering injuries. In reality, any of these behaviors that we warn against could result in a fatality. I'm actually shocked that we haven't had one so far. Certainly falls from height are very unpredictable depending on how you land and what state you're in when you fall. So again, it's just, it is part of our messaging leading up, and we will continue with that. Obviously, the over drinking, coupled with narcotic use is not safe either. Community remains frustrated with these events, as are we. I think that collaboratively we're mitigating it in the safest way possible, taking into regard, individual rights. We're sort of working with some of the experts that have learned lessons from recent events like the Freedom Convoy and subsequent inquiries that are current and ongoing. It's basically essential that we understand that deliberate police actions against a group of civilians need to be carefully planned out, coordinated, and executed, considering potential outcomes and weighing it against actually not doing anything in a specific moment of time. I think that with the advice we're getting from the public order experts that we engage for these events, we're all sort of on the right track. And I think the enforcement piece moving forward is what's going to mitigate this the most. Obviously, if we didn't have crowds of that size to deal with, would be the best case scenario. Currently, we do. And a lot of planning goes into how to deal with it in terms of public safety being our primary objective. So I didn't know if anyone had any questions. That's sort of the summary that I've come up with.
Thank you, Brian. Questions? Anyone? Christian, go ahead.
So based on last year's experience, I suppose your posture again to respond to multiple critical incidents at the same time this coming weekend, with the stabbing. And then I think if I remember, we had a separate standoff in the city that had nothing to do with the university, based on past experience. There's always a risk of a small riot or something like that. So you feel that you're robustly postured to respond to multiple incidents with the partners if that were necessary.
I do. And of course, that's a huge factor that goes into our planning, ensuring that there will be adequate response for the rest of the city, which is taxing. Our people aren't immune to burnout, and these weekends specifically, we don't allow time off short of, very special extenuating circumstances. But yes, I mean, it's part of the piece of why we have to bring in partners, and the operational plan is immense, and we'll be following it this weekend as well. But certainly the rest of the city, it will be adequately policed. Yes.
Is there any significant changes the board should be aware between how you're postured last year and how you're postured this year? So you had mentioned, for instance, that there's a change in the amounts of fines. It appears also maybe that from what I heard you say that you're also more aggressive at at sort of lower thresholds for handing out those tickets, kind of thing, like fewer warnings, and just so both sort of in terms of resourcing and in terms of sort of your posture. Can you run us through sort of what changes you've made and what prompted those changes?
Yeah, certainly. So I did briefly touch on a staffing model change, which is really has come out of the Freedom Convoy lessons learned there and sort of the ongoing inquiry. So we've actually created a new position, which I am this last weekend and the weekend coming up. So I'm the event commander. It's a level of linear reporting that we haven't had in the past. I think it's made things more streamlined and better communication between our external partners, because obviously we're employing multiple agencies who all have sort of various ways of doing things. And they're all public order. They all come with their own command system. So what's come out of the convoy is for organization and sort of accountability, there's now one public order unit commander. So that individual sort of deals with the other public order units, and then they come up with sort of what they're capable of and what they're willing to do. They deal with myself, who then disseminates that information and planning to the incident commanders, which is sort of the third level of linear command, in charge of logistics and sort of how moments in time are operating. But the umbrella look or the bigger picture is, I think, a good idea, and I think it went smoothly. The enforcement piece, I don't think the fines haven't changed from last year. I think we're a little bit more aggressive in issuing these fines. And certainly, as stated, I think it had an impact on how quickly the crowd dispersed. So we're definitely planning on continuing with that this weekend.
So if I hear you, you're the main point of contact for organizations, for non-Kingston police force organizations. So with the other partners, you're the main sort of liaison person and the point of contact, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so our command post is here in our community room. It's quite an operation with all the visiting partners having their own command table. And so with one sort of representative from public order, they deal directly with me. And then that stuff, that information and planning gets disseminated lower. So I think the model is working, but certainly the event commander sort of has control over everything that's happening.
And my notes from last year showed from the after action report there that you were noticing more, I guess, nefarious, what do you want to call it, outside activity from beyond Kingston, dealing in illicit substances and the like. Is there any sort of more aggressive sort of intelligence posture to try to identify those individuals, pull them off at highway ramps when they show up here? Like, I realize there's limits that what you can do within the Constitution, the rule of law, but whether there's any sort of posture that has changed in particular, given that those, if I recall, there was, I think, a causality between those non-residents and the violent incidents, the stabbings. So just wondering whether anything has changed in terms of the posture to try to make life more difficult for those nefarious characters to find their way here, let alone find their way to the crowd.
Yeah, so without specifically commenting on police strategies, we have implemented things to mitigate those concerns. Absolutely.
No more questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Inspector Brian Pete. It's good to hear that, although homecoming is a constant every year for the city of Kingston, that you're trying new things and taking experience from other cities as well. That's great. So thank you for your time. We very much appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Okay. Then next, we will do motions. That subject to approval of the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the Kingston Police Services Board appoint Thomas Carlaw and Nicholas Savoy as special constables of the Kingston Police for purpose of searching, guarding, and controlling of prisoners, providing security at premises or places occupied or utilized as courts, service of summonses, subpoenas, and other legal documents in the counties of Frontenac and Lennox and Addington, transporting prisoners and executing warrants of committal within province of Ontario, providing crime scene security, and assisting with traffic direction under the supervision of a police officer effective October 17th, 2022. May I have a firster and a seconder? Jeff and Christian, all in favor? Very good, thank you. Then let the Kingston's Police Service Board appoint Kyle Lloyd as an officer of the Kingston Police effective November 21st, 2022. We have a firster and a seconder. Very good. Jeff, Christian, all in favor? Thank you. I'd like to ask the chief or the deputy chief to provide bios for the new officers.
Certainly, I'm going to talk to you here about Kyle Lloyd. With deep ties to the Kingston community, Kyle joins us from the Durham Regional Police. He's served with them in various units since 2008. He's a member of the Public Safety Unit. He was also seconded to the Ontario Provincial Police Methamphetamine Task Force, and most recently was the team leader for the Drug Enforcement Unit. Kyle has taken part in multiple training courses over the years to hone his skills, including the plainclothes course, general investigations training, technical services and lawful access, advanced search and seizure, source management training, lawful justification training, mobile surveillance, or just to name a few. In 2013, Kyle received a commendation of merit from our now retired former chief, Gilles LaRochelle, for Kyle's quick actions saving an elderly occupant from a house fire on the night of November 8th, 2013. His volunteer pursuits have focused on sports, having coached football, soccer, and now he volunteers as the head coach for Kingston and area minor hockey. We look forward to welcoming Kyle, his wife, and 3 children to the Kingston Police family. And he already resides here, so it'll be an easy transition over. That's Kyle Lloyd for you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to new business. I would ask the chief to provide a brief bio in respect to the retiree of Vivian Mandingo, a civilian employee, effective September 30th, 2022.
Yes, so I'll talk about Vivian. So Vivian started her career with Kingston Police in January of 1994 as a part-time communications operator before transitioning to a full-time position in April of 1998. She was quick to make herself known as someone who not only had good judgment, but cared, receiving a congratulatory memo from then Chief Kloss for her 6 cents in alerting the OPP to an occurrence after simply hearing a groan from the caller in December of 1995. Viv's file is packed full of letters of thanks for her compassion when handling calls, from a couple who lost their dog to a mother frantically seeking help for a custody issue. She is also known for her sense of humor and quick wit, and can be proud of the contribution that she has made to the Kingston Police and to our community. We wish her all the best in her well-deserved retirement. And that's Viv Mandigo.
Thank you. Okay, then I'd like to bring up that for the date of the November meeting, next regular meeting is November 17th, but we'll have 2 of the city councilors' terms ending November 17th. So we would like to figure out a new date. Is that correct, Laurie?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, Jeff, you had your hand up.
So the inauguration is on November 22nd. So I do believe that we should be okay before that. I believe like councilors are councilors until the day before inauguration.
So just a continuous.
That's correct. So we can, I didn't know when the inauguration was for sure. So if that's the case, we can continue on as scheduled.
Okay, very good. I don't need a motion for that because it's just no change. Okay,
Thanks, Jeff.
very good. Is there any other new business from any of the board or anyone else?
Oh.
Angie?
Yes, I was thinking of, again, I just wanted to have a moment of silence, if that's okay, with respect to I'll present it to you here. So I'd like to have today's meeting with a moment of silence for the tragic on-duty deaths of the two South Simcoe officers, Constable Devin Northrup and Constable Morgan Russell, who were killed at a call about a disturbance inside an Innisfil home. But I'd also like to add the addition of the Burnaby, BC RCMP officer, Constable Shaylin Yang, who was killed in the line of duty on October 18th, as she and a member of the city's Parks Department responded to a call about a tent in the park. So a moment of silence, if we could. Thank you. And this has been devastating news for our policing families, just weeks after the deaths of Constables Andrew Hong and Travis Gillespie. So this highlights really the risks that police officers face every day, responding to calls for service and keeping our communities safe. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Then I'm going to ask for a motion to move to in camera. Jeff, Christian, very good, all in favor. And then shall we say 5-minute break? Okay, 5 minutes it is. Thank you. The regular session ending at 10:10 a.m. Okay.